Oh god. Ah. So many. Ah. I need to take a thumbnail. Hold up. Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jewel. In the words of the wonderful, amazing Taylor Swift, it is enchanting to have you here. So I haven't really done like a wrap-up video or just a video in general in a long time. So I figured that I'd just go ahead and wrap up the past 2 months in a little video real quick. I just want to start off by saying that like if I feel a bit off, like my vibes are off, like something kind of not very fun happened in my life recently. Over the weekend, my 9th grade history teacher unfortunately passed away, and I'm just kind of like grappling with that whole thing, which is just, yeah. It was only 2 years ago when I had her, and it's kind of like hard to process all of that. So if I just seem a little, you know, out of it or sadder in this video, that's that. I'm still really just trying to like focus more on the things that I'm like very passionate about, and books and reading and making videos and stuff is that. So that's what I'm gonna get back into doing. I'm thinking that starting next week I'm gonna try and get back into my weekly reading vlogs. Don't hold me to that. It might not happen if I just continue to stay out of it, but it's just something that makes me really happy, and that's really what I'm just trying to focus on doing right now. But that's not the point of the video. I am going to go ahead and go over all of the books that I read in September and October, which is kind of a lot. I didn't even count how many there are, and there are more than what was in that stack because I think 1 or 2 of them were on audiobook, but also there were a few audiobooks that I listened to but I have the physical version of that I put on there. Mom's iPad over here with my Goodreads open so I can like look at my reviews, because I mean some of these books I read 2 months ago, so my brain is kind of like a little mushy thinking about that all. It's at 10%, so I don't want to bring it over here, but I think I have to. 13, 14, 15 books. Which, honestly, saying as so much has happened in my life the past 2 months with schoolwork, work, and just a lot of personal things, that is pretty damn impressive. So we're just gonna get right into it and go over all of these books that I read. The first book that I read in September was The Beginning Place by Ursula K. Le Guin. Is that how you say her name? I don't know. I'm gonna be honest here, I don't remember a lot about this book. Gave it 3 stars, and I know I talked about it in one of my reading vlogs at one point, but I forget which one it was. But I don't know. All I remember is like basically the main character goes to like this place in the forest and he meets this girl and they like fight a monster and then fall in love within like 3 pages. Really all I remember from this book. It wasn't very memorable, so I think the 3 stars kind of fits in that perspective, but I don't know what else to say. Oh, but do not worry, because we have a banger right next. Oh my god. So this book is one that I listened to on audiobook because it was just insanely long, except my mom had it as like a physical book, and I may or may not have went to her bookshelf and stolen it and brought it to mine. Yeah, and that is Babble by R.F. Kuang. I still, after months, do not know if it is Babble or Babel, so I'm just gonna call it Babble, but if it's Babel, I'm sorry, dude. I don't know what else to say. I'm not gonna lie to you, this is my favorite book of all time. It is so amazing and beautifully written. The message is so empowering and beautiful, and I think that every page, even though it is a bit long, is much worth it. I can't imagine a single scene that should have been taken out of this book, because I think that while it could be a bit slow at times, it still was just it's a perfect book in my opinion. We are following Robin Swift, who is an orphaned child, and he is taken in by a professor at Oxford. We are following him as he is studying at Oxford, making friends with people at Oxford, and getting involved with a secret society. Not only is it a beautiful and amazing and powerful historical fiction, but it also has this super just interesting fantasy aspect to it that has to do with translation and how it can like make this magical manifestation that is lost between translation, and how just Europe is using that to their advantage by taking advantage of people from other cultures and countries. This book still has stuck with me. Like, I have it displayed on my shelves where like I have some of my books where the cover is facing towards me, and this is one that will forever remain that way. And every time I look at it, I just think and ponder over the story because I just have been forever moved by this story. I think about it all the time, and honestly, for a good reason. So good and so amazing, and easy 5 stars, easiest 5 stars of my life. It is my favorite book ever, and I will forever preach that you read this book because it is amazing, chef's kiss, love it. The good book streak does not stop there. Next up, we have Book Lovers by Emily Henry, which was another 5 stars. And unpopular opinion, but this was actually my first Emily Henry book that I gave 5 stars. I read Happy Place and Beach Read, and both of those were 4.5, but this is perfection. This is perfection in a romance. I think that it did it insanely well, and I just loved it. I say it is perfection, but it's not one that like I think about day to day, but just looking at the cover and just reading a few words on the back, you just know everything that happens in this book. Like, it's that kind of perfect book. I am not a huge fan of the romance genre. I just feel like it's all very tropey and repetitive, but this, it like takes the trope and makes fun of it. I love this book. Will forever, once again, preach it. Maybe not as hard as Babble, but just, it's so good. Okay, the next book is Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. I think that's how you say the author's name. I don't know. So my review on Goodreads, I'm just gonna read this because, okay, 3.5 stars. Some of these I felt so deep in my bones and hit me with a metaphorical truck, but being an asexual lesbian, the entire The Loving section was very unrelatable to me. And I think that's just true for the entire book. For The Hurting, those, like, even if I didn't really relate to them, just the concept of what they were going after, just like that, essentially. But The Loving, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's essentially just like a few words on a page about straight sex. So if you're not interested in that, you can read the book and just like skip that section, but Hurting was setting it up to be kind of more of like an emotional thing, but like there were a few emotional loving in the Loving section, but it was just all sexual, and I was really just kind of like, And The Breaking, it was kind of giving like angsty Tumblr poetry, I guess. It's kind of like, you hurt me. And just kind of like that. Honestly, The Hurting is essentially the only good section in this book. Hurting is the reason why I gave the book 3.5 stars, because that poetry just really hits you. The rest, not so much. Oh my god, I just saw what book is next. So I read this book, and then I had my mom read this book because I like inspired her to do it, and we were both just obsessing over this book for like quite a bit of time. That book is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. What's funny is the day that I finished it, school was canceled, and I actually referenced that in my review. I say, thank God school was canceled because I will not be thinking properly for 5 to 10 business days, and that was true. The end of this book absolutely wrecked me. I have the Owl Crate exclusive edition, and let me just say, this is like the most stunning book ever. There's this. Just wait. Stunning. I don't even know if I mentioned it. I gave this book 5 stars. I rarely give books 5 stars, and just so many 5 stars in a row. It was insane. September was probably the best reading month that I'll have all year, or probably just in my entire lifetime, with the amount of 5 stars that I gave books. This book crushes you. I can talk about what it was about. Hold up. Okay, so basically, Iris is the main character, and it is this guy named Roman who is her rival, okay? They're divine rivals, okay? He ends up going to war to write about what's happening in the war and also try and find her brother Forrest. But her and Roman have connected typewriters, and she is typing out these letters to her brother, except Roman is the one receiving them. So Roman knows that it's Iris talking, but Iris doesn't know that the person responding to her is Roman. So if that sounds interesting to you, heavily recommend picking this up. I was like slightly interested when I went in, but I went out with my life changed, so recommend this book. The next book is one that I also don't really have a lot of memories of, not because it was just so boring, because this isn't boring at all. I think it's just kind of like a trauma blockage. This book is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I gave this book 4 stars, and it was just amazing, and I was sobbing at the end, full on sobbing. I think I got my reaction to the end of the book in a reading vlog. I think really, I just remember filming myself sobbing at the end of this, which was just so fun. Only con really is that there's kind of like a lot of cheesy millennial humor in it that kind of like took me out because I was kind of cringing at some points. Also just kind of very cliche, I want to say. Well, just such a moving story, even if it is ridiculously cliche and at some points really cringy, still such a good read. Okay, the next one. This is a DNF, but most of the time I don't count my DNFs towards my like Goodreads reading challenge, but this one I counted. This is Walden. I read this for school, and by I read this, I mean I think we read like 4 essays, and I could not bother myself to finish the rest. But because I suffered so much reading this, I counted it anyways. I gave it 3 stars when I put it into Goodreads. I didn't want to give it 1, like a normal DNF, and I felt like 2 was too low, saying as I don't know what a majority of the book is like, so I just gave it like the mid 3, so it won't affect like my rating too much. Boring as hell. We didn't read the essay, but apparently there's an entire essay about growing beans. That's all you need to know about this. What's cool about my copy is it has really beautiful illustrations a lot of the time. What is this? Oh, my homework assignments. Awesome. Yeah, see? It's very pretty, but just so boring. That's all I'm saying about that book. That's just all I'm saying. We're all good though, because We Were Children series suits next. Longtime viewers of the Jewel Reads Too Much channel knows how much I love and adore Shauna Maguire's Wayward Children series, and Across the Green Grass Fields, or book number 6, is no exception to that. Despite this, I did give this book 3.5 stars. I think that this book wasn't as amazing as the other books in the series. I think so far all of the other books in the series I've given 4.5 or 5. This one just didn't hit for me. I guess Reagan as a character I love and adore, but also like we didn't know her until this book. But with the other Even books where it's like taken into a child's like Fantasyland's backstory, you know the character already. Also, I'm just not really into, you know, centaurs, horses, unicorns, and all of that, so that just kind of like took away. I find my Goodreads review very funny. It says, learn about discrimination with horses, which is just very true. It's not my favorite from the Wayward Children series, but it's a Wayward Children series book, so I can't hate it, and I just love that series so much, so yeah. My mom's iPad is at 5%, so we're just gonna have to keep knocking these down. The next book is another one that I listened to on audiobook, but I have the physical copy with me right now, so we're showing it off, and that is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This book is another one that has been just so hyped up, and I'm just so late to. Remember, this was like the top book for 2022, I think. Honestly, it deserves all of the hype. I gave this 4.5 stars. It just was so I think that when everyone said you're gonna hate the 2 main characters, I kind of figured that I would be like despising them from the beginning, which honestly I wasn't. Yes, they were a bit obnoxious, but also they weren't really like deserving of hatred. Everyone said, oh, you're gonna be so devastated by this book. There was one like section where I was devastated. I'm not gonna say what happened. All I'm gonna say is NPC, and if you know, you know. Basically, this book is following these two childhood friends who meet back up and begin working on game developing together. I feel like I haven't really read too much literary fiction, and this was a very good introduction to the genre, because I feel like I've definitely been wanting to pick up more books that aren't like fantasy or romance or sci-fi or just anything like that, and this was definitely a very good place to start. Grabs your attention, and just, yeah. I feel like that's really all I can say about this book without taking away from just the impact that it had. Once again, it's not one that I think about on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, so there's that one. All right, the next book, I listened to this one on audiobook. That is Educated by Tara Westover. I gave it 5 stars, as I do with essentially every memoir. I feel like when you're reading a memoir, it's hard for me as a person to give it anything less than 5 stars, because I mean, you're rating people's trauma. How do you take someone pouring their trauma out and say, 3.5 stars, not dark enough? Like, it's their personal story. I feel like it's just not something you should be rating, so I just give most memoirs like this 5 stars. But yeah, it definitely gives a good perspective on things like Mormonism and religious trauma, emotionally abusive families. I think that the story was just very beautifully told, but also very just dark. I think that if you're not in an emotionally good state, then you may not want to pick this book up, because it will do more damage to you than good. In the best way. Like, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in like a very good way, where it will wreck you. Just don't read it when you're already sad, because it'll just make your sadness even worse. The next book is another nonfiction, and that is The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. I originally picked this up because we had to read a few essays for my AP Lang class. Then after reading the few that we read, I decided that I wanted to just pick it up and finish the rest by myself. And if you couldn't tell, I heavily enjoyed this book. The red ones up top are for the ones that we did in class. The yellow ones are for my favorites, and the other purple and orange ones are just various things. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I honestly think that the irony behind giving this 4 stars is just because everything is rated and reviewed in here, but just like star ratings. I could go in full depth in my own Anthropocene essay on the Anthropocene Reviewed, but I don't have the time for that. What I do want to say is that I think that some of his takes are very good. As he says in the beginning, a review is basically a person's own personal memoir, as you're not reviewing the thing itself as like an objective thing. You're reviewing your opinion on it and how you see it. I see this book as a 4-star book because some of his takes are very agreeable, but other ones are just very boring and just like, why are you taking a whole essay to talk about this when there are so many other very interesting things in the Anthropocene to talk about? For example, he talked about geese in one essay and then talked about the grass that geese eat in another one, when I feel like that could have just been combined into one essay to make room for another one. At the end, he talked about like spacey stuff, which honestly I found very intriguing because I love space and Amazon's here. Anyways, he said that he doesn't want to like talk in secret or whatever. Like, he doesn't want to speak through his fiction and speak through his characters and use metaphors. He just wants to say it straight out. But while talking over a lot of the essays in my class, we discovered that there are so many metaphors in here. So many of the childhood memories and all of that are all metaphors for bigger things, because that's just how life is. This book was beautifully written. I definitely got a lot out of it, but there were also some points where I was just like, why am I reading this? It's The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green, reviewed. Next up is volume 3 of Toilet Bound Hanako-kun. This book, 5 stars, which I give to essentially all of my mangas, except for Animal Crossing manga, but we don't talk about that one. Yeah, I don't want to talk too in depth with it because just, I don't know what to say, but yeah, Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, volume 3, 5 stars, yeah. The next book that I read is The Archer by Paulo Coelho. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, so apologies if I said that wrong, but The Archer. Did I pick this up essentially because the title of it is a Taylor Swift song? Maybe. But also I read the synopsis and it did seem interesting when I purchased it. But after reading it, it was very beautiful, but also just kind of like meh. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I think that it was very beautifully written, but it was also insanely short, and also just there were so many things that could have been expanded upon, I think. I'm saying this because I finished this like 2 weeks ago and don't remember anything. What is that? I didn't say anything. I know I like read this book in my last reading vlog and I talked about it a lot in there. I don't remember a ton about this book, but I remember it being very beautifully written, but I think that just says a lot. Alright, next up we have the one and only Seconds, Brian Lee O'Malley. I love Brian Lee O'Malley and his stories. I have a problematic obsession with Scott Pilgrim versus the World, but I think that this book just didn't hit as hard as Scott Pilgrim, which is why I gave this book 4 stars. Main character, I feel like I love her and hate her at the exact same time. It has a good message that just life isn't perfect and you don't have to keep like resetting for perfection, because that's dumb. It's very adorable and I heavily recommend if you want to get more into graphic novels, because I feel like it just goes very quickly. I read it all in one sitting, I think. Maybe I like broke it up a little bit and took a break in the middle, but essentially, yeah. Quick pace, kept you invested, but also just not really perfection. And finally, last but not least, it has been a long time coming, but I have finally finished Sorcery of Thorns. This book is amazing. It's beautifully written and just so powerful. I feel like there are so many messages in this book that you can find if you just like look through all of the pages. There's just so much you can get out of this. That being said, I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars. Honestly, it could have been a 5-star read if it just didn't take me so long. Essentially, throughout all of October, it just wasn't really a very fun month for me. A lot was happening in my life, and I just didn't have a lot of time to like just spend on reading and getting invested in a huge, beautiful fantasy world. This is a very beautifully written book. I've heard it described as essentially a love letter to libraries. I forget who said that. It was some booktuber, but that is just perfectly true. My only issue is it took me so long to read because it's I think like 453 pages. It was worth it because every single one of those pages was beautifully written and I got so much out of this book, but also like took so much out of me to finish, to the point where I was like forcing myself to read at points. Near the end, there were points where I was like trying to make as much time as I could to read just so I could keep reading this book because it was so insanely good. There were other points where I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I started reading this book on I think the last day of September, if I got that right. Yeah, the last day of September, and I finished on the last day of October, and I think that says a lot. I finished so many books while I was also reading this book, and I think that says all that needs to be said to show why it's a 4.5 instead of a 5. With that being said, that is the end of today's video. Thank you so much for being here. I'm sorry that I haven't really been like posting if you actually care about my posting schedule. Gotten thrown off due to just a lot of events happening in my life. I've been very busy with school and the more personal stuff, as I mentioned at the beginning. But I'm doing a lot better right now, getting through it, and I think that getting back to making videos is really gonna help me get back on track with what I'm like normally doing with my life and just get back to the normalcy of it all. That's really it. Thank you so much for watching. It would be heavily appreciated if you could leave a like and subscribe, but if not, no worries. It's fine. If you enjoyed this video or other bookish content, I have plenty of other videos that you could watch, and I also have a bookstagram, which is always very fun. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. It means the world, and mwah, I love you. Bye!